Hey folks, it's Brian talking some more Runequest role-playing in Glorantha, the manuscript. A little change around here, trying to keep the glare off my glasses. We'll see how this all works. So anyway, this section is on the combat chapter. And the combat chapter starts out specifically talking about the traditions of combat in Glorantha. Specifically things like the challenge, skirmishes, and the retreat. They discuss the melee round, the 4 basic phases: statement of intent, movement of non-engaged characters, resolution of melee, missiles and spells, and then the bookkeeping phase. I had gotten a little confused on this with some of my con games I was running. Because back in the day when we were running it, we would always, because it's still through the strike ranks, we would actually move our figures along as strike ranks went through. So we start at strike rank 1, anybody moving, strike rank 2, anybody moving further, that kind of thing. So while some guys would move 1, 2, 3, 4 until they got engaged, and then they wait to 4 plus their strike rank to actually make the attack, I would just wait until we got to my strike rank for attack, and I would start moving forward until I could engage in attack. So just mechanics and how people interpret stuff, that kind of thing. But having read through this, the whole point is for non-engaged characters to be able to move, to be engaged. So the movement happens first, and so those strike ranks get automatically added onto your strike rank, and then when the modified strike rank point comes, that's when you attack. Much cleaner than what I was doing before. They talk about multiple activities outside of melee, and this is another thing that I got wrong with my con games, because as I had read it, it talks about some things taking 3, 4, 5 melee rounds. We have rituals and you're doing things to modify your spells and all that kind of stuff. That things will happen until your strike ranks go over round 4, strike rank 3. That's when that thing happens. So that's how I was running it. And so if some guys are not engaged in combat and moving around and doing multiple things, and we just kind of, okay, that's going to take 15 strike ranks, so strike rank 12, so on strike rank 3 next round is when that final thing occurs. The manuscript seems to indicate, no, you're still limited to your 12 strike ranks. So if you take that attack or whatever it is you're trying to do, doesn't finish till strike rank 3 of next round, it happens whatever that strike rank is of that next round. So maybe some give and take there. I'm not sure yet. We'll play with this more and see. One of the offensive actions within melee. Oh, you're only allowed. Once you're engaged in melee, you're only allowed 1 offensive action. So you can cast an offensive spell, or you can attack with a weapon. That's what I'm trying to get to. Not too big of an issue there, but then there's a whole thing of you're engaged in combat, you throw out some blade sharp, and you get your melee strike rank, and when do things occur? Can it get a little mushy? Maybe. But ideally, the concept is if you're going to do a demoralize or befuddle or something like that, that's your action for the round. Disengaging. You got 3 options on disengaging. One, obviously, is the retreat, where you're spending your round doing a dodge or defense kind of thing. And then at the next round, you're then able to move away. Then there's a knockback. If you knock somebody back, you're disengaged from them. And then there's the infamous flee. You just turn and run, in which case the person you're engaged with gets a free attack. Parry. There's almost a page and a half of parry stuff, where they're breaking things down between parrying with a weapon and damage occurring to the weapon, and that sort of thing. It did get a bit confusing. There's 2 sections in here where they discuss if you're parrying with a shield and you overcome its armor points. The first incident. The first time it talks about it, it's something we had discussed at Origins. This is when it first came out. We were talking about how often we've been breaking shields, that kind of thing, and because the way the rules were written in the quick start is that if your shield takes your shield's medium shield, 12 armor points or hit points, we're going to call it, Every time it gets hit, it goes down by 1. So you know your shield's going to last 12 rounds, and then it's useless. And discussing with some of the Chaosium guys and among ourselves, our recommendation was when you overcome the shield's hit points, it takes a point of damage, and eventually it'll get rotted away. And that seems to be how they first discuss it. Once you overcome its armor points, then it starts subtracting 1 less every time that happens. So sequentially, you're going to overcome the shield's armor points more and more frequently as its armor points go down. So it's a cascading effect where eventually it gets all chewed up. No problem with that. I like that. I have no issues with it whatsoever. However, less than a page later, it talks about every time you get hit, the shield goes down by 1 armor point. So I think it was just some correction they had made initially that didn't get filtered all the way through the editing. And they also discussed that a critical parry against a critical attack devolves to a normal attack versus a normal parry. They cancel effects. But again, later on, they changed that. Also, they don't discuss anything initially about, what about a special parry versus special attack? And that's how I would treat it, is levels of success. Critical attack, critical attack, critical parry, normal attack, normal parry, do your damage. If it overcomes the shield, blah, blah, blah. Special attack versus special parry, same thing. Back to normal. If it overcomes, that kind of thing. That's not quite what they're doing. There was somebody on, I think it was a basic role-playing page where they were discussing, they made a matrix of, critical attack versus parry. This is what happens, that kind of thing, which can be handy, but can be a bit encumbering. So my personal taste on it is a critical parry blocks, all of the damage, essentially. A critical attack does all this extra damage. So it does get kind of funky on at what point do you actually overcome the shield and maybe go through and do damage. Something to work through eventually. But the point is, you've got levels of success and a built-in ability to overcome the shield's armor points to see if you actually damage the person or not. Now, further on, they come against successful parry versus an unsuccessful attack. And this is where all the weird stuff happens, especially if you're using a weapon. A successful weapon parry can damage or will damage an attacking weapon if the attacking weapon fails to be successful. If you have a failed attack with a weapon against a successful parry with a weapon, the attacking weapon takes damage. And you treat it essentially the same way you do with a shield. If it overcomes armor parts, it goes down by 1. No issues there. They have an exception for long-hafted parry weapons. I'm parrying with the halberd. You parry with the staff part. Yeah, and they talk about that. But they have this last statement, and then that paragraph says, they can, right after talking about hafted weapons don't damage failed attack. Successful hafted weapon parries do not damage failed attack weapon attacks. Okay. But after they say that, they say they can, meaning hafted parry weapons, they can damage shields, however. Where does that come from? I'm punching with my shield. He's blocking with his staff. I don't know, maybe a club gets to damage a shield because you're hitting on the edge or something, and so they figure it's the same thing. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. But if it's a halberd doing 3d6, that staff piece is not doing 3d6 to that shield. Okay, so that's something still up in the air. They also give an example where all of the weapon damage is subtracted from the armor points of the parrying object. All of it. So if it's a round, you're parrying with your shield, he does 15 points of damage, 3 overcome, shield goes from 12 to 9. I don't know about that. That's a bit, feels excessive to me. I don't want shields to last, 2 rounds. That's not any fun. Now I do know that they did increase the whole concept of shields and parrying weapons being damaged more frequently than the original Runequest 2. And part of that was to build this dramatics and that kind of thing into it. And I can see them wanting to do that. I don't think this is the way to do it, though. And, okay, here we go. They also talk about parrying a critical hit. The parrying object takes double damage. So there's where did that come from? I don't know. Later on, we'll find out. Okay, damage to weapons. Every hit. Oh, this is that contrasting portion earlier where they say only after you overcome the armor points does it go down by 1. Where it says every hit reduces the armor points by 1. So that's what I was talking about. Correction, didn't get all the way through. If your parrying object, and specifically they're talking about shields in this paragraph, if I recall correctly. If your shield reaches a 0 hit points or armor points or whatever it is it's called, I don't remember anymore, it becomes unusable. It's still there, it's all broken up. The shield boss is loose. The rim on the shield is loose, that kind of stuff. There's some cracks and holes in it, that kind of deal. Not a problem. You can still parry with it at half your skill. But once you get to double its armor points, so from 12, 0 to negative 12, at that point, it's completely destroyed. And I would apply the same thing to weapons. With the weapons, do that too. Then it's cool. They have a box called Summary of Combat Actions. They cover attacks, dodges, and parries. But then clarifies a special attack gives the excess damage to the character after the weapon, parry, or shield does its thing. So if you've got a special attack that does extra damage, so it's not much easier to get over the shield or through the shield or whatever to actually damage the person. And one point later on, they'll talk about it's the arm, but at this point, it talks about adjacent location. So there needs to be some clarification on that at some point. And then they say a critical attack. If there's excess damage, meaning you get more than the 12 points for the round, the medium shield, that will destroy that shield or over the armor parts of the weapon, destroys the weapon. So critical attack against a successful parry destroys what it is you're parrying with. We have rules for critical attacks and how much damage they do. Just apply the same mechanic. That's how I would do it. Home rule number whatever. Okay, and they talk about special parries are treated just like normal parries. Don't know why that is. Critical parries against a normal or special attack, all the damage goes to the attacking weapon's armor points. Again, all. So special attack, we're assuming does more damage than normal, so it's easier to go over that 12 points for your shield. But again, do the 15, then all 3 apply to it. For critical, I can probably buy off on that. I can see that mechanic working well. Because you nailed it, that kind of thing. And here, previously, remember, they talked about critical parry versus critical attack, normal parry. Here they say critical parry versus a critical attack avoids all damage. It is a manuscript. I'll let it go. Okay. The next section, combat skills over 100%. And remember always, you always have a 5% chance of failure. And 96 to double up always fails, no matter what your percentage is. But they don't mention at this point having a skill higher than 100% increases your critical and special percent chances proportionally. Not discussed at all. It is on that chart. It gives all your skills from 0 to 120 too. That the crit and special increases. They don't discuss that here at all. You can use, this is interesting, you can use the over 100% to reduce an opposed roll. And this is actually makes plenty of sense to me, and I knew we did this before too. If you got 120% to attack and 120% to attack, and your guy's got 55% to parry, your effective attack is 100%. His effective parry is 35. That difference over 100 goes right to decreasing his ability to do his thing. Got that. Not a problem. But they specify as long as the opposed skill percentage is lower than the adventurer's or the attacking skills percentage. And of course, you can apply this to hiding and listening and all that kind of stuff too, but we're talking combat here now. So if my sword skill is 120 and your sword skill is 120, now it seems to make sense to me that his sword skill becomes 100 if he's pairing with it, and your sword skill, well, I think it should still be 120. I'll talk about that in a second. Excuse me. But they said that there would be no application at that point. That one has to be lower than the other in order for the extra bonus to apply. I don't get that. And they clarify that your raw, unmodified skill is what we're applying this 100+% deal with. You have to have a raw 120% sword skill in order to get that 20% modifier against the guy's defense. And they give an example. If you get fanaticism, which increases your percentage by half again, if you are at 100% and you, or yeah, 100%, well, it's 100% or more, so 95%, well, do 90%, math easier. Then you do fanaticism, you get a plus 45%, you're now at 135%. They're seeing this 35% bonus deal to decrease this thing doesn't apply. I don't really buy that, and I certainly did not use it when I was doing the quick start, because there's a part there where the bad guy, it's got, if he has time, he's casting Blade Sharp and Fanaticism, which puts him well over 100%. So he's been chopping people when he gets the chance to actually hit. Never did get that increased special attack actually rolling that though. Another factor of having 100% or higher in your weapon skill is being able to split your attacks. And they say you can use any percentage as long as it adds up to 100. So if you have 100%, you can do 50-50. If you have 120, you can do 60-60, or you can do 50-70. But you can't do 40-60 because the skill minimum for both attacks is 50%. I don't buy that. In fact, if you've got 100% and you're fast enough with the weapon that you can make 2 attacks in one round, you should be doing a feint at 5% attack on that first one. Who knows, it might hit. And then you get your 95 since you always have 95%. Anyway, that's just a natural factor. If you're fast enough, throw that feint out there, it might hit, and then you get your real attack. So that's just my interpretation again. And they have a section on using passions and runes in combat. Now they're calling it inspiration. Before it was just, what was it, modifying or adjusting? Some other word though. Now they're calling it inspiration. And that if you are able to use a passion or rune to inspire your combat, it lasts for the entire combat. And then there's this despondency, because if you fail or fumble a passion roll, and technically a rune roll as well, there are factors that affect that passion in the rune. But they say that that failure thing will only last for that combat as well, instead of lasting longer. Who knows? They also give an example where they're using a passion roll to get a modifier, and they specifically state that if you make the passion roll, it will get an experience check. Doesn't matter if what you're inspiring, that attack or whatever, is not successful. You still get that experience check for the passion or rune, which I would do anyway. That's just how I do things. Okay, combat results. Finally, some fun stuff. Damage, armor, and magic. All those things affect how much damage you get, how much damage is rolled, how much armor you're wearing, how much magic protection you have as well. Then they talk about the special damages, and I'm really glad they did this. It was an optional rule in Runequest too, but it only made sense to me to have all three: your impale, your slash, and your crush. I like that concept that they're all a little different, but they all give, you know, these bonus damage things. Thrusting weapons obviously do an impale. Cutting weapons do a slashing, and these are all special damage attacks. But then they do cut and thrust, like a I guess a rapier or a rapier, however you want to say it, or a gladius short sword kind of thing. Slash, you know, slash and cut and thrust, where you get to choose whether you are cutting or thrusting. So the special would either be a slash or an impale, but it says you have to do that before you roll. Now, back in old Runequest 2, an impale did max damage plus roll damage, and a slash did roll damage plus roll damage. So it only made sense to do an impale if your weapon can impale. And if you want to watch movies, you want that, you know, that cinematic effect, that killing blow is always a thrust. Always. Sword, thrust, he's dead, you know? Whatever. And then blunts do a crush. We talked about that a second. Okay, impaling. That's another thing I get kind of confused about. What's going on here? Impaling, the verbiage says, twice normal rolled damage. Broadsword D8 plus 1, you roll 2d8, you add 2. Got it. Not a problem. There's a chance that when you do an impale, a special attack with an impaling weapon, that the weapon is stuck. And then there are special rules if they're parrying, you don't get stuck in the shield, that kind of thing. And encumbrance of the weapon and what does the shield parry and all that kind of deal. But they say that a crit does max weapon damage. So what they're saying, instead of rolling 2d8 plus 2, it's 18 points. If it's a crit, it's 18 points. Yeah, maybe. I still like the whole concept of critical means you bypass armor. But anyway. Slashing. Rolled normal damage twice. How is that different from twice normal damage rolled? I don't know. So essentially, a slash and impale do the same damage on a special attack. Impale has that problem of being stuck. A slash gives you the opportunity to have an incapacitating attack. So if you slash somebody, they have to make a con minus the damage roll times 5 on percentile. And how much damage they physically take, because on a slash, your armor's still absorbing and magic's absorbing and all that kind of stuff, right? So this is telling me that a slashing weapon is 3 times better than an impaling weapon. They do the same damage. An impale can get stuck, and a slash, I guess it's just twice then. Then a slash gets this extra incapacitating effect. That's one way to differentiate the two, I suppose, but if I get speared through the gut, I think it's going to be incapacitating just as much as getting slashed across the belly. And in both instances, my abdomen is going to be going below 0, or I'm incapacitated anyway. But then they go about a crit with a slashing weapon does max weapon damage again as well. So again, that broadsword, broadsword D8 plus 1, max weapon damage, 18 points. Then why do we have this extra effect with criticals bypassing armor? I'm going to have to play with this. But my gut feeling is no thank you. Okay, crushing. States double bonus damage. So if you got a troll with a 2d6 damage bonus, using that mace, which is a d8 plus 1, he rolls a d8 plus 1, and then he rolls 4d6 for his damage bonus. Good to go. I love that stuff. Great. But then they state in the paragraph that you roll your damage bonus plus you get your max damage bonus, which is what used to be in the Runequest 2, the old stuff. Roll damage bonus plus max damage bonus. That's much better. I think that's better. That's the way I'm going to do it. But then discuss anything about a crit doing max damage. Only if we're impaling and slashing weapons, I guess. Finally, we get the critical hits. Here's a section on critical hits. Ignore armor and other protection. Also, a weapon that critically hits is also doing an impale, a slash, or a crush based upon what kind of weapon it is. And I always did that anyway. So there's an argument here that a critical hit means you bypass armor. So if you look at these Bronze Age armor, there's all kinds of open spots, right? Inside the arm, armpit, in the joints, on the side, in between straps and buckles, down between edges, that kind of thing. I have no problem with critical hits bypassing armor protection. But what about that protection 3 spell you've got up, or shield 2? That's 3 or 4 points of protection. That's a magical field around your body. You bypass that too? Or what if it's a troll and his skin is just so tough he's got a point of armor protection? Now, skin protection, yeah, I can see bypassing that because there are points of the body, joints specifically, where the skin is more flexible, therefore weaker, not as resistant. And so, yeah, I have no problem with that. But I do seem to have a problem with the magic. That's something I've discussed with my players as we go along. I don't know. Maybe I could go either way. Honestly, I could go either way. We all have to agree, I guess. And then they have Fumble and the I don't know, standard. I didn't read through it, section by section, but they have a Fumble chart just like they did in Runequest 2. They have a Fumble. You roll percentile. These things happen. You roll low, not so bad. If you roll really bad, you roll again. That kind of thing. Armor breaking off, things messing up with your helmet, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's this episode on combat. Almost 30 minutes again, which I was planning. I knew it was a long one. Next week there's going to be weapons, armor, and other combat rules. So if you like this stuff, you're interested in finding out what's more about it, if I'm saying something that makes any sense or is a good point to bring up, let me know. Appreciate it. Feedback's always good.